Hey YouTube, it's Charlie from Reader Turned Writer, and today I am sharing my November 2021 wrap-up. It has been a while since I have actually recorded a video. I have had some pre-recorded videos set to go throughout November because of the baby, and now those are done. I believe I don't have any more after this. Yeah, I didn't do a wrap-up last month, and so it's been a little while. Life with 4 kids is pretty crazy. Life with a newborn and other kids can be a little bit challenging because newborns require a lot of time and attention and lack of sleep, and then you still have to have enough to give to your kids, the other kids, and so that's a little bit challenging, but we are finally coming out of survival mode and getting back into normal life. Oliver is doing well with sleep. He is finally sleeping a little bit better at night. At night he sleeps 10 to 11 hours with the occasional night where he'll wake up at like 4:30 or 5 to eat instead of 7. And so that's been really nice. I've finally been able to get a little bit of sleep. And he also is starting to fall into more of a schedule routine with naps. His naps are still hit and miss. Some naps he randomly will wake up after 30 or 45 minutes or whatever. And of course, he doesn't have like a set time for naps. It's more like he's falling into a rhythm of, I figured out how long to keep him awake, but it's nice to be able to have those naps and to be able to put him down for those and to be able to get sleep at night. And homeschooling the kids, I've gotten finally back into where I feel like I can actually do homeschool stuff with the kids. And we've kind of figured out how to do that with a baby, which is just different. And so that's been really nice. Like one of the things that I was struggling with before was reading aloud to my kids. And I really wanted to continue to do that, but I was having a hard time finding myself doing it consistently throughout the day. We always read to them at night, so they always do get read to every day, which I love having that as part of their bedtime routine, because then I know even if I don't get to it during the day, but I know it's better to read during the day as well, and I want that to be a big part of our homeschool. And so something that I've done is when Oliver wakes up from his first nap, it's usually around 10 or 10:30, and so that's when I sit down and I read with the kids. I have them come on the couch next to me while I'm nursing, and I read while I'm nursing him. And then I can, after he's done nursing, he'll sit with me while I read to them because he's a pretty easygoing baby. And so that has worked really well, and we've figured some things out like that. And then we'll do a lot of things during his naps in the morning. And, you know, if certain things like laundry never gets put away, it never gets put away, but at least we're doing homeschool. So it's all good. And if you can hear my kids in the background, it's getting harder and harder to find a time when, especially with it cooling off outside and being cold, it's getting harder to find a time when I have some quiet to record, so that's just life. Even with all of the craziness of having 4 kids, I was able to read 13 books in December, and I barely made it. I was finishing up the last 3 literally not yesterday, the day before, on the very last day. Wait, yeah, yesterday, because today's December 1st. Yes. Days feel super long right now, sorry. So I was finishing up the last 3 yesterday, but I did manage to finish them and come out of the month with 13 books. One of the first books that I listened to was Lazy Genius by Kendra Adachi. And I did enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars, but it wasn't my absolute favorite self-help book. I would actually recommend Atomic Habits over this one, but I feel like it was a good companion book to read with Atomic Habits, especially if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed with like where to start, because it felt like, and she actually quoted James Clear. It was funny, I was listening to the book and I was like, it feels like she is just like saying a lot of things from Atomic Habits, and then she quoted James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, and so I think that she got a lot of inspiration from him for her book. And it basically felt like she was saying, okay, here are some problem areas for women, because the book is specifically written for women. Here's areas in their life where they struggle, and pointing these, kind of like bringing these areas to light, you know, like saying, do you struggle in this area? And then saying, what's the minimum amount of conscious effort that you can put towards this? And here's a whole bunch of ideas. And she was very good about not being like, this is the best way to do it or something, but just giving ideas and as kind of a general jumping off point. I did really like her voice. I found it very easy to read, very accessible, and I think that it is a good book. I think that Atomic Habits is more useful, or at least I found it to be more useful because it was more principle based and less application based, and hers felt more application based. So it might be preference, or it might just be a good one to read along with Atomic Habits. Then I read Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, and I rated this 4 stars as well. I really enjoyed this one. It is written in verse and it is beautifully written. It's like reading poetry. But it's not hard to read. Like sometimes I feel like when we say, you know, it's like poetry, I think of poetry, and sometimes I'm like, it's hard like classics, you know, but the language isn't like that at all. It's just very beautiful in a poetic way. It all takes place basically in an elevator ride down, and so it's kind of unique in the premise. The ending is also unique. I don't know that I loved the ending because it leaves it kind of open for you to interpret it how you want to, and I am one who likes a bow neatly tied, but it is interesting and makes you think. Then I read Sister of My Heart by Chitra Divakaruni, and I'm sorry about the name. I'm so bad with names. This is actually one that I read when I was in high school for my English class as a senior, I believe, and I wanted to reread it because I had like dim memories of it, and I remembered it liking it, and it kind of teaching me things about cultures that I didn't understand before, but I didn't really remember it, so I really wanted to reread it. So I did end up finding it. It was hard to find because I didn't know what it was called. I only knew kind of the premise, but I did find it. And actually at first when I was reading it, I wasn't sure it was the right book, but it was the right book. I'm actually a little bit surprised that I did read it in high school because it does have some sexual content. It's not super explicit, and it's between married couples, but it is there. I was like, oh, I did not remember this. It's about 2 cousins who basically grew up as sisters in India, and kind of their journey into adulthood as they get married and try and follow their dreams, and kind of the heartaches that they face and the things that get in the way of their dreams. Again, the ending is a little bit ambiguous, and I didn't love that, but I do love both of the main character girls here. They both are so strong in their own way, and I did really enjoy rereading this. And then I read Talk of the Town by Lisa Wingate. I actually had read the 3rd in the series last year, I believe. I really enjoy Lisa Wingate's books so far. This book was not my favorite by her. This is the 1st in the series. I enjoyed the 3rd one more, actually. I think because in this one, the 2 main characters, so it's about this town in Texas, this like little town in Texas, and there's 3 old ladies that just I absolutely love. I absolutely love the little town and the 3 little old ladies that are friends in this town. And the 3rd book follows them more closely. This one has one of them as the main character, and then the other one a different girl, same as the 3rd one, but it just felt like it was more of a focus on the other girl, not as much on the friendship between the 3 ladies. And so I think that's why I like the 3rd one more. But it's a fun, kind of lighthearted Christian, clean read. It has romance, it has little town vibes, and it just, you know, it's a really cute, fun book. I rated it 4 stars. And then I finished The Dollhouse Murders by Betty Wright. This is one of my favorites from when I was a child. I think just because I owned it and reread it so many times. And in October, about halfway through October, I picked this up with my daughters and started reading it aloud with them. And then so we finished it this month, and I really like it. It's about this girl who she has, I don't know if her sister's autistic, it doesn't really say, but I think maybe autistic sister that she always has to take care of, and she ends up going to stay with her aunt for a while because it's just too much for her to be at home. And her aunt, in her aunt's house that she's clearing out, in the attic there is a dollhouse, and there is a mysteriously the dolls start to move. And there's also something to do with the murder of her grandparents that she has to get to the bottom of while she's staying there. And so there's a whole bunch of family dynamics. There's the kind of creepy vibes of the haunted dollhouse and the murder mystery type stuff here. And there's some friendship stuff in here as well. I really enjoyed it as a child. I enjoy it less as an adult, but I did really enjoy it. My girls liked it as well, although they are a little bit young for it. I think that they'll like it more when they're maybe like 2 to 4 years older. And then I listened to Necessary Lies by Dianne Chamberlain, and I loved this book. I rated it 5 stars. It takes place, I think, in the 60s, following some families who were on welfare with the government and were part of the eugenics program. And the characters in it are made up, but the eugenics program was a real thing, and she kind of tried to base experiences that the characters had on actual events. It was really interesting. I never learned about the eugenics program, and so I feel like I learned a lot about like that part of our history. And I also just absolutely loved both the main characters. They were both so strong and brave, and the ending is a time jump, which isn't as satisfying, but it still ties it up in a really heartwarming way, and I really loved that, and gave us like kind of the answers that we were looking for. I would highly recommend this one. It is really, really good. My Agatha Christie book for the read was The Hollow. I really enjoyed this one as well. It is a Poirot book. He is not actually in it as much, and that's the one drawback to the book that I had, is that we don't get to see Poirot very much. In fact, he doesn't even come in until about a third or almost halfway through the book. It has a very long introduction to the murder, which lets us get to know the characters really well, and there's like this really intricate web between all of the characters, to where any of the people, of course, could have been the murderer. And so I thought it was really good. I didn't guess who it was, but I also hardly ever guess. I'm not very good at guessing who the murderer is. So, but I thought it was a really fun one, despite it not having Poirot in it as much. And I'm sorry, I can't ever say his name either. I'm so bad at pronouncing stuff sometimes. And then I listened to Deep Work by Cal Newport, and I rated this 3 stars. This is actually one that my husband got and really likes on Audible, and so I listened to it because I try and keep up on all of the books that we own, so we don't own a whole bunch that I haven't read. And it is definitely, I am not the target audience, which is part of why I did a lower star rating. And part of it is that it was just kind of dry. He uses stories, they're just not quite as engaging to me as something like, say, Atomic Habits, which I talked about earlier, because he uses a lot of storytelling and I love his stories, where this one, the storytelling didn't feel quite as engaging to me. And I felt like the idea of deep work versus shallow work was really good, and that I got a lot of ideas as I was reading it for how I could improve my life and my focus. I just didn't feel like the execution was amazing. And then I listened to The Lost Stories by John Flannegan. Now, this is kind of embarrassing, but this is part of the Ranger's Apprentice series, this book. And I have been trying to read the first Ranger's Apprentice book for quite a while. So the first time I read it was maybe a year or 2 ago, or the first time I tried to read it was a year or 2 ago. And I went to the library and I saw The Ranger's Apprentice, book 1. So I took it and I took it home and I started reading it. And it turns out that that was like the prequel series, which has 2 books in it. So I finished that, the prequel duology or whatever, and I liked it. And so then I was like, okay, now usually it was written after the series, so usually people read it afterwards, but whatever. So then Audible had a sale on the Ranger's Apprentice book, so I bought it thinking it was the first one, and I just didn't look at it very closely. I guess I just assumed it would be the first one that was on sale. I don't know what I was thinking. So then I was listening to it, and it's like this series of short stories, and I was like, this is not at all what I was expecting. Like, I was expecting him more to be like learning the apprenticeship and like have like an actual plot line, not these like short stories highlighting different characters and stuff. And then I realized that it's because this is the last book in the series, and it's supposed to like tie up all the loose ends for the rest of the series, and that's why. So now now I've read the prequel and the epilogue. I don't know what you call the last book, like after the story. So now I just need to read the actual series. It was good. I rated it 3 stars. I think I would have liked it more if I'd read the original series first, but I can't say for sure. And then I read The Love Letter by Rachel Hauck, and this is one I've been meaning to read since February. I actually started it in February, but I was feeling very sick. I was going through morning sickness at the time, and I just couldn't focus on it, so I set it aside, and then I finally picked it up again this month, and I liked it. It is kind of it's one of those books where it's a historical fiction, but then it also has half of it is in the present. The historical part takes place during the American Revolutionary War, and it's a love story between a loyalist and a patriot. And then during the present, one of the characters found his great-grandfather's love letter, his great-great-great-grandfather's love letter, which is obviously the love interest in the historical part. And he wrote a screenplay around it, and so one of them is the screenplay person, and one of them screenplay writer, and one of them is the actress that plays the love interest. And so then it's a love story between those two. It was okay. I felt like it should have been like I felt done reading about here. The ending felt very drawn out to me. I think that I would have enjoyed it more if it was just the historical aspect. I was a lot more invested in that plot line, although I did end up caring about all 4 characters. But I think they would have been better separate stories rather than combined like this. But I am also not a huge fan of the 2 different, like, of the past and present combined. It feels like you're finally getting into one of the stories when you switch, and now all of a sudden you're in the other one. I also didn't love the ending. It was a little bit predictable, and like I said, it felt drawn out, but it was cute. It wasn't bad. I love the cover though. The cover I think is beautiful, and it's one of the reasons I picked up the book. Also read Cytonic. I read it on my phone, so I don't have the actual hard copy yet. It is coming on Friday though. But Cytonic is the 3rd book in Skyward, and in the Skyward series. There's one more book, and it was just barely released. I also read Read On, which is a novella that comes before Cytonic, and so I read both of those. And Read On, I was like okay with. There's 2 novellas. I read the other one last month, and they're both okay. I feel like they're very important for the story. They just weren't my absolute favorite. They were just more YA than I would expect from the series, but it was co-authored with someone else, and that's why. Whereas Cytonic was actually, I know some people didn't like it as much as Skyward, but I loved it. It was my favorite book in the series so far. There was a lot of world building. It felt more like Brandon Sanderson to me than Skyward or Starsight, and in fact Skyward has been my least favorite of the series so far. So yeah, the characters in it were fantastic, and there's a quest that she goes on that is just really fun, and she gets to meet pirates in the nowhere, and it's just really, really cool. So yeah, if you haven't read Skyward and you like YA, then I would highly recommend it. And then the last book that I read was Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, and this is a classic that I have been wanting to read for a long time. I actually started it way back when my husband and I very first got married, but then I got busy with school and stuff, and then started having children, and I just never picked it up again. So I just started over this month because I wasn't exactly sure where I was, and I wanted to make sure I remembered everything. So I read the whole thing this month, and I really enjoyed it. I really like Charles Dickens. His writing is it's brilliant. His characters, I don't know how he does it. I just can never read a Charles Dickens book without going absolutely crazy about the way that the kids are treated. And I know that that's like based off of, reality of what he saw, and that just makes me more crazy. It just drives me crazy. But poor Oliver Twist. But it all turns out good in the end, and yeah, now I want to go watch Oliver and Company because that's just what I kept thinking of the whole time I was reading it, because I grew up watching that. So yeah, I had never really known the whole story of Oliver Twist, and it was fun to read it, and it's definitely one that I will want to revisit in the future. So yeah, those were all of the books that I read in November. Let me know what your favorite book was from the month. Mine may have been Necessary Lies or Cytonic. Those were both really good. I also really loved The Hollow. So let me know what your favorite read was from November in the comments below, and we can chat about books more. If you want to follow my reading journey more closely, you can follow me on Goodreads. I do post a review for every book I read there. And you can also check out my Instagram. I post my favorite books and talk more about my writing journey on my Instagram. Both of those are linked down below. I would love to connect with you there as well. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for lots of reading and writing content. And thank you so much for watching my video. I will see you in the next one.